Hello, all, and welcome to the latest episode of the Horror Countdown podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and with me tonight is my friend, Stacy Cox.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome on board. For tonight's episode, we are going to be discussing our 10 favorite extreme horror films. So I know that this is kind of a broad subject. There's a lot of different ways that we can interpret this. So this was your concept. This was your idea. So, you know, what made you decide on the topic, and what kind of criteria did you use for selecting your list and all that kind of, processes that you went through to shape the final result?
What made me choose this topic is because extreme films have been something that have been my interest for a while. And at one time I went, I don't know, like several months on a whole binge of just watching extreme films. And then I had to take a break from that. But like, I don't really have any criteria, so to speak. It's more so like, how does it affect me mentally? Basically, is what I look for. So like I said, we just talk about films, kind of like a Serbian film where, okay, wow, this is a really messed up film, but it also has substance and everything to it. There's a whole history lesson, all of that. It's really, how does it impact me mentally? Like, if I'm still thinking about that film long after I watch it, then that goes on my most extreme list.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I kind of approached it similar. Although I should mention that kind of at the last minute, I ended up and I switched out a lot of choices on my list. So for those that don't know, we had discussed the topic beforehand, and I had made my list, which was pretty much filled with like indie and underground kind of stuff. And the day before we were recording this, you were talking about it on Facebook about, doing the show with me, and I missed it at the time because I was, recording another episode. But when I came back, I ended up looking through the list, and I was like, oh, are they going to talk about, such and such? You're going to talk about so and so, and I was like, oh crap, I forgot about these kinds of films. Maybe I should, include them because they're technically extreme. And so my list kind of shifted a little bit just to include some of the the choices that were mentioned, but I kind of agree with the way that you said it about thinking about the films and having like an impact, because in a sense that is what an extreme film is, and that's what it should do, is not necessarily just be like a collection of violent images and just bizarre, grimy, sleazy, disturbing sequences and themes. It should also have something more to it, and there should be something that makes you think, and it actually like leaves like a lasting mark. Just because you want to make sure that there's a separation between general horror and extreme, because you're applying the label to it. And when you apply the label to it, you have to make sure that the label is, appropriate, because otherwise, why are you labeling it as an extreme film? I mean, you said Serbian film. I mean, I'm almost positive we're going to discuss that at some point. But, there's other films. I mean, we were discussing before the show about August Underground and the fact that, yeah, it's dirty, it's disturbing, and, there's a grimy atmosphere to it, but it's not that extreme in its presentation, just because it's so amateurishly made that it's impossible to take seriously. And stuff like that, I see why there would be an appeal to it, but it's not necessarily the kind of stuff that I kind of gravitated to on the list. So I kind of made more of an effort to make professionally shot material that is dirty, disturbing, and kind of has this bizarre and obscure kind of a aesthetic to it that I think kind of epitomizes extreme films. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get tons of controversy and, why didn't you include this? Why didn't you include that? But that was kind of where I went with it and sort of the approach I took.
I feel the exact same way. And as we were, talking earlier, Yeah, when it comes to films like August Underground, like I said, I went out because I just kept hearing about these films and it piqued my interest. And, just like how people just keep talking about something and saying how disturbing it is and everything, I'm just like, I got to find these films. I have to. And actually, I ended up purchasing them from someone on the Unearthed Films Facebook, because I follow Unearthed Films. And he sold them to me for $25 a piece. I was able to get Mortem and what is the third one called? Mortem and Penance, I think.
Penance?
Yeah,
Penance,
Penance.
yeah, Penance.
He didn't have the first one. I still couldn't find the first one. But when I went ahead and watched Mortem, I was so excited, so my anticipations are high, expectations are high. I go watch it and I'm just like, so wait a minute, what is going on here? I'm like, no, this looked like it was shot on like a cheap cell phone in somebody's basement. It looked like a real snuff film, honestly. It felt like a real snuff film. And the just the quality of the cinematography and the special effects was just like, no. I'm sorry, but you really cannot have an extreme film and not have good special effects. You can't.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that's kind of one of the separating factors. Just, I mean, like I said, you're applying the label to it for a reason. Like there has to be a point.
Yeah.
And yeah, if it looks too amateurish and it looks too, unrealistic, it's not that effective. Yes, you're going to get by a little bit based on, the concept and the theme, just because, you're not necessarily creating like a PG-13 kind of mainstream film. You're not necessarily making like the next Conjuring or the next Insidious or, any kind of, something that like would show up on by Bloomhouse or, you'd scroll through Netflix and find it. Like it's not necessarily mainstream. It's underground. It's, extreme and it's not necessarily for everyone. But if you make it look too bad that you can't watch it, that it just looks, indefensibly amateurish, it doesn't have the same kind of an impact as something that, okay, maybe it's not necessarily as graphic and confrontational and disturbing in concept, but if it's pulled off well, it's going to have more of an impact because it just looks that much more realistic.
Yes, and that's actually one of the reasons why I stopped watching trailers before watching the actual movie. I decided to go into these movies blind. Like I'll do a little bit of kind of research just to see what I'm getting myself into, but I won't read the reviews before watching the movie anymore. I'm like, I'm just going to watch the movie, go in blind and everything, and not get my expectations up too high.
Yeah, that sounds like a solid practice. I mean, I've been doing that just because I didn't like the idea of, you know, being spoiled and, like knowing what was going on. I liked more the idea of I'm going in anyway. Why do I need to be sold on something that I'm going to watch for myself?
Right?
S- So it was kind of like, okay, I don't really necessarily get that excited, but I mean, yeah, that's kind of, essentially that's what I was doing as well. But yeah, if we're ready, did you want to start in on our lists?
All right, let's do it.
All right, so I'll take the lead on this one. Like I said, this was kind of I switched up my list at the last second because I ended up and I had a slew of underground and indie films on my original list, and then talking to you or reading your Facebook post, I kind of switched up a couple of the titles. So the last couple of ones maybe a little bit more on the underground side, but my number 10 is a film called Larva Mental.
Mm,
So it's like I said, this is an underground film. I think it came out either 2020 or 2021. I'm not sure, but it's by a by an Italian filmmaker called Michele Bellardi, and it's basically about this guy and his girl. They're just inseparable. They're absolute sweethearts. They're completely in love with each other, but they engage in a series of extreme and unconventional sexual activities. We'll leave it at that. And when she ends up dying, he ends up and tries to take the pain away by turning his body into a meat, meat package, essentially. This is one of the most graphic and the
Mm.
most brutal films I've ever come across. Just because a lot of what's going on in here is psychological to a degree where you understand the mindset that the guy goes through to put himself into the position to do what he does to himself. And that is kind of one of the reasons why I thought of it as like, a perfect example of these kinds of extreme films where, yeah, okay, it's not necessarily the strongest in story. I mean, it's basically, we, you know, guy meets girl, girl and guy screw each other, girl kills herself, guy kills himself. And I mean, not the strongest of stories, but it's all pretty much psychological in how he builds himself up, and he goes through, the recollections of their past together, and you see their relationship, and you get a sense of who the two are together, so that by the time that you realize that she's been dead the entire time and he's reminiscing on their history together and preparing to meet her himself, the sense of how he's able to, slice his throat open, or, shave his dick off, or, stick needles down his, penis, or, other kinds of stuff like that. I mean, that's not even touching the, not even like dipping my finger into the extremity that this guy goes through. So yeah, the scenes are confrontational, and they're, very graphic and very confrontational, but there's a purpose behind it in that you see what he's going through as sort of like a cleanse of their relationship, and he's doing it to be reborn back into her again. And it was just something that really stuck with me, and I really enjoyed it when I first saw it. I've always kind of, championed it as like one of the newer, more extreme films to come out. So if you get a chance to find it, it's definitely worth a watch. But yeah, my number 10 is Larva Mental.
And actually, you know what that makes me think of? It's a American guinea pig film, the one where he he
Sacrifice, right?
sacrificed. Yes, he's.
Okay, so funny story. That one's actually not an American movie. That's actually an Italian film that's done by the same creative crew.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, the same creative crew did Sacrifice.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
When you were describing the movie, I'm like, wow, that sounds like Sacrifice.
that's because it is. It's the same creative crew. I think a lot of the Bellardi wasn't involved in Sacrifice, but I think it's the same production crew, and I think a lot of the effects team is the same people. I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that I think it's the same, core group of the creative crew is involved as the same people. I think that's pretty much what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's the same creative crew, like the producers, the special effects team, and all of that. I think they're the same ones involved. But yeah, that's like I said, that's one of the reasons why. Like I said, Sacrifice is actually an Italian film. It's not even American. So it just got lumped in
Yeah.
just because it got lumped in just because it kind of fit the theme of the rebooted franchise.
Okay.
So yeah, like I said, the original film is just called Sacrifice. That's the original name. But then when Unearthed picked it up, they distributed it and they rebranded it into the franchise. So it is called American Guinea Pig Sacrifice, even though it's not American. It was actually produced overseas in Italy, and in distribution, it got picked up and rebranded into that franchise.
Wow, that's great to know. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I doubt that you've heard of this one. So we'll move on to your number 10.
My number 10 is Flowers by Phil Stevens.
Hmm.
And wow. that movie. So Flowers basically is about. Ooh, it's hard to explain this film. Okay, so basically it's about women that wake up. I think they're underneath someone's house, right underneath the guy's house, to realize they're dead.
Yeah, it's been years since I saw it when it first came out, and it's been a few years. I believe it's the basement. I could be wrong, but I think there's like this special room in the basement, and I think that's where the film starts.
Yes.
Like I said, I could be wrong because I haven't seen it since it first came out, but if memory serves, I think it is. It's somewhere in there because they have to crawl up, so I'm thinking it's got to be the basement.
Yes, that's what I was saying. It was either the basement or underneath the house. But yeah, and then they realize that they're dead, and it's just it's so surreal. It's so hard to explain that movie.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I saw that. Like I said, I saw it too. I know what you're getting at. It's too abstract for me on my list, but I can see the appeal.
And
Because
also,
it's like I said, it's just so bizarre and just like it's so like avant-garde and like art house kind of.
yes, and also just the cinematography, it was just so like it was, I don't know, the choice of the cinematography was really great for that film. Special effects were great, and yeah. And actually, Phil Stevens, I think he does a great job on his films. Actually, like Long, I think it's called Long 2 or Long LL, or that Phil Stevens also does, and the cinematography was also great. Um, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I haven't seen any of the other ones. All I've seen is just Flowers. I know that there was supposed to have been a sequel. I don't know what happened to it.
Well, it looks like it came out in 2020, according to IMDb, or I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know if it's done filming or what, but according to IMDb, it's saying 2020.
hmm. That's,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look into that. Cool. Because I'm saying I heard there was supposed to be a sequel, but I don't know what happened to it. So if you're saying it came out, I'm gonna have to track it down. I like it, but I'm not like necessarily a fan of what it is just because it's so surreal and so abstract. But it's a solid choice. I don't mind it at all. That's a decent number 10, I would say. So we'll move on to my number 9. This was kind of one that I didn't really have much intention of putting it on the list. It kind of falls into a little bit of what we were saying earlier about it being kind of amateurish and like a little bizarre and not necessarily being like a well-made movie, but I still think it deserves a place on the list just because of its history, its significance, and kind of I think it being like one of the first like really out there like exploitation extreme horror films. I went with 1976's Blood-Sucking Freaks.
Mm.
So this was one that I had seen years ago. Had I did know that it wasn't an uncut version. I just seen like this film floating out and one of those 100 films you have to see before you die kind of a thing. And when I first saw it, I kind of laughed at it and thought it was like really kind of cheap and chintzy, and it kind of reminded me a lot of Herschel Gordon Lewis's Wizard of Gore, just because it kind of plays like a lot of like the same themes of like this magician that plays mind tricks where he kills people and makes them think that they're not being killed on screen, but then they really are kind of storylines. But the story about this one real quick is so basically this couple a series of couples go to this magic show, this bizarre art house kind of live stage show by this magician, and soon after they all make derogatory comments, and then one by one they all start disappearing, and it turns out that there's this weird uh, slavery connection. And there's like a ton of different side stories in this one, but the main thing with this one is that it's just so brazen in just exploitation and putting nude women on screen for like the majority of the film because every single woman on here is, full bush, uncensored views of their, butthole kind of a thing. And, like full nudity all over the place. You get all kinds of, like a weird kinky sex stuff. And then, there's a scene where it legitimately shows him humping a corpse. So you even get like, necrophilia thrown in.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that I kind of didn't necessarily realize until later because it was a scene that was cut out, and it was a scene that was trimmed from the version I watched because like I said, I inadvertently watched a censored version of the film, and the uncensored version, there's a shot where, I mean, I know by your statements, I think you've seen it. It's the scene at the very end when the detective and the husband are coming to visit, and they're doing the raid in the warehouse, and he's in the harem with all the other girls, and he's in the coffin. There's a explicit shot where it shows the woman with her throat cut, and that's the one where he climbs off of her, but there's an explicit shot where you see like her throat slit, and like there's a couple of other like marks on her body, but you don't really see it that well. There's a specific shot where you can clearly see that her throat's cut, and there's all kinds of like blood like draining off of her arms and stuff like that. So you like very plainly get the sense that he's engaging in necrophilia with this corpse because he's climbing off of it, like he's mounted it from the very beginning when they come in on him, and then he gets off and like they do their spiel and whatnot. But yeah, there's even that thrown in. So, like I said, it's not necessarily one that I would call a good movie, but I think just because it is so historically significant, I think it has to, have a place on the list. So, yeah, I have it at number 9. I went with Blood-Sucking Freaks.
And it's another movie that actually reminds me of, and I think this is also an indie film, Carnival of, is it Carnival of the Dead, Carnival of the Damned? Um,
Um, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
oh, I saw that movie not too long ago too. It was about, oh, yeah, it was about basically a traveling carnival, but they were like psychopaths and everything. And actually, it's a well-known indie actor in it. What is his name? Um, he
uh,
plays in one of those unearthed films as well.
yeah, oh God, my brain's not working right now.
Oh, is it is his name Robert? No.
No, I know who you're talking about. I
Um,
oh, Circus of Dread.
is it Circus of Dread?
I think it is. I think I know what you're talking about. I think I think that may be the name, but I know who the actor you're thinking of. His name is
Bill
Bill
Oberst
Oberst.
Jr. Yes, Bill Oberst Jr.
Yeah, Bill Oberst Jr. That's his name. So I'm looking up his IMDb right now because I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Circus of the Dead. That's what it is.
yeah, because it was so hard for me to find them because that was another movie that I just heard so much about. And then a friend of mine actually sent it to me, and I was like, wow, this movie is just so like, it's another extreme movie. Yeah, it didn't make my list, but it was also still extreme.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Like I said, I still need to see the full version of it because I haven't seen the full uncut version.
I did, and it is, I can't remember. It was one of those, websites you're not supposed to go to find movies. It was on,
Oh yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah. It was sometimes you got to go there though. When you're trying to find a film that you can't find on these mainstream outlets, you got to go there sometimes.
Yeah, I'll admit, I do have a couple places bookmarked. They're very, very, very low on my priority list. Um, They're barely used, but I will say that I do have a couple places bookmarked for that occasion. So yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I will admit I've done that a couple of times in the past. It's not a heavy rotation thing. I barely use it, but I have it just as a last resort.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah,
my number 9 is, and I'm probably going to butcher this title, but my number 9 is Thanatomorphose.
no, that's close enough. I'll accept it. I think that's um, I would probably say that myself.
By Eric Fallard. Sorry, by Eric Fallardio. Fallardo. I butchered that. I
Yeah,
apologize. But oh yeah, and so Thanatomorphose basically is about a woman who she hmm, she starts basically rotting from the inside out.
yeah.
And she's just sitting in her house in this room, knowing she has this condition and not seeking any help, not want to go out and everything. And I just found that so bizarre. And just to see the process of her just slowly dying and rotting like that was very intense for me.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I had it on my list originally when I had it on the indie version. Yeah, some of the stuff in this is really brutal.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of just it reminds me of another film I think called Contracted, which does the same thing.
Yes, and I've seen that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of rate both of them about the same, but I think Thanatomorphos has the better effects, so I think higher of that one. But yeah, they're both really kind of uncomfortable and yeah.
Yeah, and also I think Thanatomorpho, I think Contracted is probably a little bit more modern. But like Thanatomorphos, I think resonated with me more because just like, I mean, the acting and when you see like that slow progression, everything, I don't know. It just affected me visually. Mentally, it affected me, and I just could not stop like thinking about that scene, about her just sitting there slowly rotting, and I'm just yelling at the TV or at the screen like, what are you doing? Go get help. You ain't right. Like, why are you just sitting here rotting like this? And it's just, yeah, it really affected me.
Yeah, I can see that. I
Oh,
mean, yeah, it's really, really tough to get through that one. I think a lot of it is with that one is like we were saying, the high quality special effects work just because it looks so realistic.
yes.
Yeah, like I said, that one was on my list when it was full indie kind of movies. But then when I started thinking of the more mainstream ones, it kind of fell off. But yeah, that one's still on my honorable mentions. So yeah, that's a good one. Uh, So moving on to my number 8. This is one that I kind of I've oddly kind of grown attached to this one just because I don't know why, but this one it just kind of speaks to me. I went with 2019's Erotic. Um, so this one is by, please, for the love of God, don't be mad at me. I cannot pronounce this guy's name. Domiziano Cristofaro.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. I've seen several of your films. I cannot, for the life of you, pronounce your name, and I'm Italian. My last name is Anelli. I am Italian. I should be able to pronounce this, and I don't know your name. My apologies. But yeah, this one, for some reason, it just speaks to me. I kind of grown attached to it. So basically, there's actually a pun in the name. Uh, it's not necessarily spelled erotic in the normal sense, erotic.
Yeah.
The actual title is a lowercase e, and then rot is capitalized, and then ic. So if that doesn't give it away, it's a film about a necrophiliac. And that's essentially what the film is. It's about a serial killer who mutilates his bodies, leaves them to decompose, and then has sex with them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I mean, he legitimately has sex with them in that there's multiple scenes of him fully naked. So you see his penis flying around. There's several scenes where he legitimately grows an erection and either has a decomposed body part rubbed up alongside of it, or in like the most graphic sense I've ever seen, he legitimately sticks it into a abdomen of a corpse,
Oh,
and you see it from it's a static shot, so you see his penis inside the abdomen looking down the spinal column. So you're up at the neck, you're looking down into the abdomen, and you see his gliding up and down on the backbone of the abdomen, and then all of a sudden he ejaculates on it. And this is uncut, uncensored, in full view. You see it everything. And
okay.
yeah, like I
So,
said,
the, I'm probably gonna butcher it as well. Domiziano Cristofaro, and I was just okay. So, I've seen Deep Web, Triple X. I've seen Torment, and then we've already talked about Sacrifice.
right?
Yeah, so I know how brutal graphic he can get.
Yeah. I've seen Deep Web Triple X. That's also an honorable mention on mine, just because I had it on my indie list when we first started. So yeah, that's another one that I had on my list as well. But erotic speaks to me just because, what we were saying earlier about there being a point to, the cruelty before the madness. And this is one of the films that I think captures psychologically how a person is convinced themselves enough to partake in this, because you follow him around. I mean, the entire film, the serial killer is on screen every second of it. Directly or indirectly, I should say. I mean, you don't see his face every frame, but he's there the entire movie. And it depicts how he came into, being the serial killer that he is, and, being afflicted with this condition, how he goes through all of the different necessary preparations and treatments that he needs to in order to, prepare the bodies perfectly, the disposable methods to, keep getting away with everything, all of that kind of stuff. And it's far smarter than it's ever going to get any kind of credit for, because anybody is just, you're either going to be completely disturbed and disgusted by, the necrophilic act I described earlier, or you're going to be put off by the fact that that's the opening of the movie is him standing there jerking himself off with the severed hands. That is the opening of the movie. That's literally how it opens. Is you open on him stroking himself with his hand, and then it pulls back, and you realize, oh, he's not using his hand. He's using the severed hand of a victim.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's literally how it opens. You know, open from fade in, a guy stroking himself with the severed hands. Title screen after.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? Not the movie itself, but that part kind of reminds me of. Have you ever seen? And a friend of mine keeps reminding me of this movie. What is it called? Uh, let's see. Found is the sequel. Or the
Headless.
Headless. When he,
I
oh, that scene when, yeah, when he's basically, doing that to the head.
Yeah. I've seen Found. I haven't seen Headless. I know of it. I just haven't seen Headless.
Oh, Headless. Headless is I cannot get that movie out of my head. And he constantly reminds me that it's there.
Mm.
Yeah, but there is a scene in Headless where basically he's a psychopath. He was a serial killer or whatever, and so one of his victims he took his head and basically screwed his head
Hmm.
for the yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I get the sense, yeah, what you were saying, but like I said, I've seen Found, I haven't seen Headless, but yeah, it's one I'm intrigued to check out just because of the connection with it, but yeah, I mean, like I said, this one it just stuck with me for a reason, and it's kind of grown on me, but yeah, my number 8 is Erotic.
my number 8 is, and this is actually part of the Masters of Horror imprint by Takashi.
Mike. It's
Is it
Mike.
Mike? Okay,
It's
Mike.
Mike.
Okay, Takashi Mike. Thank you, because I keep saying Mia K or
Yeah.
so Takashi Mike. Oh, that film. Well, that one scene where, that one scene where what was that one scene where she had her just kind of like levitated in the air by all these needles?
Yeah. God, what was that? I've seen this recently, and I'm trying to think back. Um,
That has to be one of the most extreme scenes that I've seen in a movie. And me, like, I mean, I don't like needles, so I was just so like, ew, I'm just, kind of itching all over, but that was a very memorable scene to me. Yeah.
no, I understand that. Yeah. I can't remember much, but yeah, that I know where you're coming at with that because I used to have that as well. Not as an extreme thing, but I was kind of uneasy around needles. But yeah, that's that I can understand that for sure. So okay. Did you have anything else or?
No, that's it. That's my number 8, imprint by Takashi Miike.
All right. Well, we'll move on to number 7. This is another one that I've seen kind of recently. It was one that I didn't know what I was getting into when I first saw it, and it was kind of a little more than I anticipated, just where it goes. Um, Funny you bring up Found and Headless in the last discussion because I'm talking about Scott Shermer's The Bad Man.
The Bad Man.
So yeah, this was one. I think this was the one that he did directly after Found. I think this was the follow-up. If I remember his career right, and I'm not sure I do, so forgive me if I'm wrong. I believe he did Found, Bad Man, Harvest Lake, and then the most recent one he did was Plank Face, which I haven't seen that one, but I do have it. I haven't been able to get to it yet, but I do own the Blank Face. Um, but Bad Man is I really uh, this one kind of took me by surprise when I first watched it. Uh, a couple head out into this mountain getaway cabin out in the woods for fun little marriage times and all that, and they meet this guy who's lost in the woods, says he got stranded while out on a hunting trip, and offers him shelter. He'll leave in the morning. He just needs a place to stay for the night, so he's not like stuck in the elements kind of a thing. So they bring him in, and they wake up hogtied and bound in chains, and come to find out that he's actually preparing to kidnap them and put them into a sex trading um, organization. And yeah, it's basically just the rest of the film is basically just dehumanizing them and making them into suitable sex slaves. So it's basically just humiliation, degradation, just putting them down and trying to ensure that they're going to be cooperative and they're going to, be compliant to their new owners. He straps the guy into with a dog-style gimp mask, and he basically just calls him Mutt the entire time. He makes the girl do all kinds of, sexual favors, all kinds of just, mental and psychological abuse, and just like, this is what your life is going to be, get used to it, and you can't stop me kind of an attitude. Just yeah, it was really, really good. I was kind of shocked at it. It kind of goes off the rails a bit in the third act. Not necessarily going to give spoilers, but yeah, in terms of like just extreme and kind of just uncomfortable and uneasy and just leaves you with like an icky feeling, not necessarily because of how graphic it is, but just how psychologically terrifying and like
Yeah.
how much of a mind fuck this would be to go through. Yeah, this one was an easy choice to put on the list. I think it's like I said, 2017 or 18. It's The Bad Man.
Yeah, and movies like this, they they really just like hit me deep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can definitely see that. I mean, I'm saying I think you would have a greater reaction to it even more than I did, just because of you being a woman and the majority of the film focuses on the woman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I I I really like this one, and like I said, it really kind of took me by surprise when I first saw it. So yeah, my number 7 is The Bad Man.
My number seven, ooh, another one that hit me deep and just is We Are the Flesh by Emiliano Rocha Mentor.
I can't help you. I haven't seen this one, unfortunately.
Oh. Okay, it says after wandering a ruined city for years in search of food and shelter, two siblings find their way into one of the last remaining buildings. Inside, they find a man who will make them a dangerous offer to survive the outside world. Well, oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Sorry, when movies just have me speechless, it's, you know. um,
Mm,
But yeah, that's my number seven is We Are the, because just when it comes to like, so two of my really, sore points when it comes to movies is rape. That's one thing. Rape, any violence towards minors and violence towards, animals. You know.
understandable, yeah.
So three, and yeah, and this movie it just hit one of my sore points, and it definitely affected me mentally after watching it. But yeah, that's my number seven. We Are the Flesh by Emiliano Rocha Mentor.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard of it and I've heard the rumors about it. I haven't gotten to it yet. So yeah, that's one
Oh,
I'm
I'm gonna ask you, and then this is kind of a little irrelevant to this movie, but in the sense, how did how did you feel about a Serbian film, right? The last scene when not the last, it wasn't even the very last scene, but closer to the end of the movie, when we found out he was, screwing his own son. How did that scene make you feel?
the first time I saw it, it was a gut punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of just, I remember kind of like almost turning white.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just like speechless. I was just like, oh no, and that's another reason why it's like that's one film that you only watch once, really. You don't really watch a film like that more than once. But so kind of the same thing with We Are the Flesh. Um, there's a scene in there that just gut punched me.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's my number seven. Is We Are the Flesh.
All right. I mean, yeah, like I said, I haven't seen it, so I can't offer much, but yeah, it's on my list. So, I think what we're gonna do is, like I said, this is the part of the list that I kind of adapted once I realized what we were gonna be talking about, and I kind of started offering a little bit more well-known and kind of, more mainstream titles, if you can call it that. But I think any kind of discussion on this list is lost without Takashi Miike's Audition.
Ah, that's my number six too.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's my number six too.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's kind of hard to do a list like this without including that at some point. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't really get extreme until the, third act and all that, but man, when it does, wow. Um, I remember when I first saw it, the infamous scene with the bag. I cannot recall a time that I left more air under my seat than that thing when I first saw it. I mean, that's still, to me, it's one of the greatest jump scares in cinema, and from there, I mean, the film just goes off the walls.
Yeah.
And I mean, what makes it to me more, not just, what we know about everything beforehand, where you see all of the, processes that they go through, all of the, deviation and manipulation that goes on. It's that glee in her face when she's looking down at him, and just that smile she has as she's putting him through his paces.
Oh,
That to me is the most terrifying thing about everything. It's just, she has that smile, and you just know deep down in your gut he's not making it out of this film alive, and it's only a matter of how much of him is left when it's over, is when the film is going to end. And it it just got me. I mean, like I said, it's still one of the few times that it makes me jump the scene with the bag, but just the glee that she has, and the creativity to put him through those kinds of stuff, because this is before Saw. I mean, we don't get, like crazy tortures and just like, bizarre contraptions and all that kind of stuff. They're the only one real film I can think of before this was Cube, and it's not necessarily the same kind of film. But I mean, like I said, that was kind of like the only real one that I could think of that kind of went in a similar vein. So, um, I mean, I feel like I can keep going on this, but I mean, it's your number six. So, what else do you have to add to it?
oh, that. You know the scene I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene. I probably that scene was very memorable to me. One of the most memorable scenes in cinema history, of course, in my opinion. And I think I felt the same way about that scene as I did about the scene in Print by, also by Takashi Miike. When I was telling you about that one scene where she had her like, up in the air by the needles. I think I had the same reaction to that scene. And like I had to pause the movie. I had to pause the movie for a moment to just like kind of grasp like what the heck is going on. Like yeah, definitely a memorable scene to me. Definitely something that will always stay in the back of my mind, And honestly, it probably should have been, I don't know if it should have been like even later on my list or not. I don't know. It might be
Yeah.
where it needs to be, but
Yeah. I only have it just because this part of my list I don't necessarily have in much of an order. It's basically just how I thought about them once I realized, oh, I can add mainstream titles to the list.
yeah.
So Mine, from here on out, they're not necessarily in order of how I like them. They're more just the order they came to me when I realized, oh, okay, if you mean mainstream films, then I can add this, then I can add this, then I can add this. So if I probably would have sat around and thought about it, I absolutely would probably have this higher. I would probably have it maybe top three. But I'm saying just this part of the list I have basically is just, oh, okay, I can add this one, I can add this one, I can add this one.
Yeah.
And yeah, it came to mind when I realized, oh, I kind of went at this the wrong way. I went indie, I went underground, I can do mainstream. And Audition is the first one that came to mind. So
Yeah, I definitely really had to like really think about where I wanted to put everything on my list. Um, but and honestly, like I said, these aren't even all of the most, extreme films I've seen, but probably some of the most memorable. I think I was going with that, some of the most memorable films.
yeah.
Yeah. But yep, number six, Audition.
All right. I mean, since that was both our number sixes, I'll move on to my number five. Again, this was kind of another one of those, okay, this is a no-brainer extreme film. What else needs to be said? 1980s Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh yeah.
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 Um, I mean, the history of this thing speaks for itself. I mean, it still holds the record for the most number of countries that it's still legitimately banned in.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I mean,
can we address the elephant in the room? The animal that was that
uh,
real?
every frame of it.
Oh,
Yeah, every frame of it. The muskrat, the turtle,
yeah, that
the
punch.
spider, and then the monkey. All of it completely real.
Okay, there's another gut punch to me. I didn't know. I didn't know it was real.
Yeah.
But you want to know what's probably one of the most memorable scenes in that movie for me? And this is probably going to sound completely like crazy, but when she was, peeing standing up, I was like, how do you do that? That
Oh, yeah.
that scene, yeah. I had to rewatch that scene a few times.
Yeah, see, as a male, I never caught that.
Yeah. I mean, did you see though, like how she was like legit standing up?
Yeah, no. Like I said, as a male, I never caught that. Wow, I can imagine now that you say it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I told you it's gonna sound crazy, but that scene right there was memorable for me. But
I mean, yeah, saying that I can understand that. I'm just saying as a male, I never caught that.
oh wait, no, I'm thinking about something else. Sorry. No, go ahead, because I'm thinking about another movie that we're gonna talk about in a moment.
Really? I could have no, because it's the scene where she comes across the woman on the pole.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's the scene you're talking about, right?
Oh, yeah, no, not no, no, I'm talking about something else, but that scene too was,
Oh.
hmm
Oh, oh, oh,
No,
oh, oh.
no, you know what? I got it mixed up with another movie that we're going to talk about in a moment.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I'm saying I thought you were talking about when they come across the one girl that had broken their I think it's one of their rituals and they have her like displayed on the pole.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about that scene. Oh
Oh,
my
that's
God.
another memorable.
Oh,
Oh, yes, that's another memorable scene. But I really
yeah.
got it mixed up with another movie. That's
Oh, okay, yeah.
but no, Cannibal
Okay.
Holocaust. I did not know those were real animal deaths. Wow.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Um, I will say this. It doesn't help, but I will say this in the movie's defense. It
oh,
wasn't the first one to do it. and it wasn't the last one to do it.
Really?
All of the
So
all
it's
of
it's like a real snuff.
in a sense, all of the Italian cannibal films that came out in the 70s and 80s. So if you want to list real quickly, it would be Man from Deep River, Jungle Holocaust, Eaten Alive. There's
I've
one
seen some.
more. There's like I said, there's like 5 or 6 of them. Oh, Slave of the Cannibal God, that's the one.
Oh,
Slave of the
I haven't seen any of those.
Okay, yeah, Slave of the Cannibal God, Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox, and
I've seen Cannibal Ferox. I didn't think it was as memorable as Cannibal Holocaust, but I've
yeah,
seen.
Ferox is yeah. I'm kind of the same way. Um, Ferox is kind of a cheap imitation, but yeah. So what I was saying is, all of the Italian films that I mentioned off, that whole scene, they basically all went ahead and killed off animals for real on screen.
Oh,
Yeah, all of them feature those kinds of sequences in the films, and they all, in real life, killed off the animals to film the sequence.
oh no. I
Yeah, the entire scene did it. So it wasn't just Cannibal Holocaust that did it. It wasn't, the only one that
yeah.
it wasn't the only one that did it. It's it just fell into, that was the scene at the time and that was the way that they did it and it followed suit. So I'm not defending it. I'm just saying it's, if you levy it against Cannibal Holocaust, you have to levy it against the others.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I have a tough time watching any of those. I own them for the sake of owning them. I rarely watch them, but if you're going to levy it against Cannibal Holocaust, you got to levy it against the others because they did the same exact thing. I think Holocaust's reputation just kind of made it like that was the focal point, that was the one that you had to go after just because, it was part of everything else that was going on with it. But I'm just saying it's not the only one that did it. It wasn't the first. It wasn't the last. Because there's a couple of others that came out after and they did the same exact thing. So, you know, fair play, play is fair play. You levy it against Cannibal Holocaust, you levy it against the others.
Yeah. Whew.
So yeah, I mean, if that's a, list of stuff for you to avoid because of that concept, I mean,
No, no, no. I mean, I'll still
I, I,
watch it.
I
I mean,
guess,
sore
I guess,
subject, but I also like I said, it's a sore subject for me. Um,
like I was saying, I mean, I know you were saying that in, the other film, but
uh,
yeah, like I said, if you're going to use that as an excuse to avoid them, you're welcome, I guess. But um, yeah, those are the other films. You would probably want to look them up because a couple of them were released under multiple titles just to try to get themselves around all of the controversy and stuff. So those aren't the official names. Those are just the most well-known versions of that the film is under.
okay.
So if when the episode comes out and you want to take the notes down and look them up, which one's which, you could probably go at it that way. But it's essentially all of the Italian cannibal films that came out in the 70s and 80s. So all of them ones about a group of explorers going off into the jungle and finding a cannibal tribe, all of the films from Italy in the 70s and 80s did that. So it's not just Cannibal Holocaust, it's all of them that did it.
Okay. I will definitely look them up.
All right. So
Well, my number five is Men Behind the Sun by Tun Phi Mao.
I guess it's been a while since I've seen this one.
Okay. It has a few oh well, no, this whole film just really made me feel some kind of way after watching it. But I think one of the most memorable scenes in this one was when, what did he do? First, he poured hot water on her hands, and then he poured cold water to make them freeze, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that was the order. Like I said, it's been a while,
Okay.
so I believe that's how we did it. I I don't imagine him reversing it. I think it was hot then cold.
Yeah, hot and cold. And I think that was probably the most memorable scene, even though it has a few. I mean, the scene with the rats and that just, um, but yeah, this film made me cry.
I can see that.
I
I
cried
mean,
in this film. How did you feel about it?
yeah. I mean, it's been a while, so I don't have the strongest memory of it. So it's why it's not on my list, just because I can't say much about it, just because I'm not
Yeah.
familiar enough with it to really say much. But yeah, there was a few parts, especially the stuff with the mother. I think that was kind of the strongest one to, the stuff that got to me the most was the stuff with her. But yeah, I remember having a bit of a tough time trying to get through this one. I think the length was also much of an issue just because I'm not really used to that kind of stuff. But yeah, in general, that one was a tough watch. I remember.
Yeah, this was another one that you watch once and that's it. Just watch it and say you've seen it. But I think every film should really be that way to where it's like, okay, I'm gonna watch it to say I watched it and that's it. But yeah, this is one of those ones that you just watch once and you don't, but see, like it's another film that affected me so much mentally to where it's like I still can't get it out the back of my head, out the back of my mind, it's still there. It's still simmering right there.
Yeah. Like I said,
And
it's been at least maybe 8 or 9 years.
oh, okay.
So yeah,
I I did watch it. It's been a few years for me, but not that long. Um,
yeah. Well, there was a time where I went through just because there wasn't a lot of stuff coming out that I was interested in, so I kind of like went back in, like filled in a lot of missing gaps and a lot of the exploitation stuff that came out that I'd missed. So I caught a lot of stuff probably like maybe a decade ago. There was a point where I went through a lot of stuff, and yeah, that was one of them. Um, so yeah, I haven't seen it since. So like I said, I don't have the strongest memory of it, but yeah, I do remember certain parts of it. I do remember him messing with the hand.
yeah.
That one definitely stuck out.
And then the rat scene with the
The
rat.
rats, yeah, the rats are for sure another big one.
It just goes back to like because this was all during the time of war and everything. These um were I think they were like slaves, right? Because they
I
lost
bel
the war. They were
prisoners of war, I think, but they were,
and
yeah, I think, like I said, they were treated like slaves, but I think they were just straight prisoners of war.
yeah, and then it's like it just goes back to where it's like yes, like some humans are really treated like subjects like this,
Right, yeah,
and yeah, just that whole concept alone to where there's some people out with science, whoever is treating, humans like this for test subjects, experiments and stuff. But yeah, it definitely it was hard to get through. And I don't think that was another one I went into blind. I heard so much about it and I went into it blind.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah. But that's my number five, Men Behind the Sun.
All right, so moving on to my number four. This is another one that I watched, and it just completely blew me away. And it sounds funny to say this, but I was fully on board with this wherever it was going to go from the opening minutes of the film. It's 2018's Trauma.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah. So this is Argentinian or Chilean. I don't remember. It's one of the two, but It's from South America. So th- the scene that kind of got me, and this is like I said, the part that won me over essentially was the opening of the movie is about the group of soldiers who are coercing this guy to have sex with this woman, who it turns out is his own mother, and they basically force him at gunpoint to rape her.
Oh,
And
oh,
yeah, so basically they stick a gun to his face and say, "Pull your pants down and start thrusting." And he does, and but he kind of like does it hesitantly. And then they all of a sudden they grab, they have the gun on him, and then one of the other soldiers grabs his hips and starts thrusting for him. And the scene goes on for a while, and then all of a sudden he pulls away from their grip and starts doing it himself. And like I said, this is his mother. So that's how the movie starts, because that's kind of, bam, credits. But the rest of the film is it's kind of hard to say this. It's either, like I said, it's either Argentinian or Chilean, but it's their version of I Spit on Your Grave. So a group of women are out in the countryside. They're, enjoying their weekends, and they come across this soldier and his men, and all of the girls are brutally gang raped, and then
oh,
it devolves into their means of revenge. And the revenge in this one is kind of weird in the sense that it doesn't come as the form of a film-long journey the way I Spit on Your Grave is. Basically, all of their revenge is the men keep following them no matter where they go to try to escape to get away from them, and all of their actions end up, involving a confrontation, and they end up killing them one at a time through the men keep coming back to finish the job. So it kind of like it's not necessarily, like they rape them at the beginning and then the rest of the film is, them coming back and settling the score with the guys. It's the men constantly on them, and they can't escape no matter what. And that's where like the film comes from, is like, they're too traumatized to fight back. So it's sort of like, how much can you take before you snap, and you're going to end up letting it happen anyway. So just, let it happen. And that's sort of like the mentality that they use to try to keep the women in line and to keep them from, getting away essentially. But yeah, this was a shocking one. I was really surprised at it. I mean, like I said, it's really just over the top and brutal. I mean, it starts off with that, rape scene at the beginning, but it goes on from there. And a lot of the, it's well filmed for what it is. I mean, it's obviously, shot in Latin America, so you do sense, it doesn't have like the as much polish as you would imagine as like a mainstream Hollywood film is, but even still, there's still a lot to like here. And yeah, if you can get past the opening of the film, it's actually really enjoyable. So
yeah.
yeah, my number four is Trauma.
Yeah, and actually with trauma, it didn't make my top 10 list, but if we were going beyond top 10, it would have made the list definitely. I remember when I used to write for DK Mag, I mean, they're not operating anymore, but when I used to write for DK Mag, it was one of the screeners that I had watched. Um, yeah, and as I've mentioned before, just like rape, is one of my, sore points. So that film definitely made me feel some kind of way. I definitely remembered it and it affected me mentally. So, yeah. My number four, whew, so much about this film that just, my number four is Martyrs, 2008 by Pascal Largier.
Logier.
Logier. Logier. Um, so much to say about this film. Man, so when they go back to the house, when she goes back to the house, I'm first thinking like, why would you go back to that house after you're finally free, first of all? But it's just so much to unravel with that film, with Martyrs. It's so much to unravel. I What was the most memorable scene? Oh,
Uh,
no. Yeah, no, like it's easy. The part where what did she even whisper in her ear?
um, it, there's something about um, I think it's like a something about fate that you were like destined for this or something. I don't remember it exactly, but I think it was like something involving like fate and destiny or something. Unless I'm thinking of the wrong scene.
No, no, no. The scene to where after she went through all that turmoil at the closer to the end where she's been beaten, she's been scalped and all of that, and at the very end, well not the very very end, but like closer to the very end when after she went through all of that, you know, turmoil and everything, she whispered something in her ear and then the woman just kind of like looked like distraught and just walked off. What did she even whisper? Because there was no subtitles, no nothing. You couldn't hear what she even whispered in her ear.
Oh, that point? Yeah, I don't think you're ever really supposed to know. I
Okay.
think it was, yeah, I remember, I don't,
They wanted to know how death even felt like, right? That's what they really wanted to know, how
I
death felt.
think, I think that was the thing is that it means more in French than it does in English, so I don't think they translated it, but yeah, I think that's what it was. Now that I know what you're talking about, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
something
that
about,
scene
yeah,
right there where, you saw how she looked after everything. That was, that was a very memorable scene. And I will never get it out of my head. I've watched it a few times actually. I can't even believe I watched it a few times myself. But yeah, that's my number four, Martyrs.
and
And,
my,
well, did you see the remake? How did you think the remake was? I didn't think it was that good.
it's all right. It's watchable, but I mean, that's kind of like the most praise I'll give it. Yeah,
I
it's
felt
better.
like I don't know. I felt like they didn't really push the envelope far enough.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's his biggest issue is that it just feels too clean.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I've certainly seen worse. I mean, I think the remake of Inside is worse, but
I'm trying to think. I've seen Inside, but I don't know if I've seen the original or the remake.
yeah, the remake of Martyrs is better than the remake of Inside. I'll say that. So I mean, I don't get all of the hate for it, but yeah, it's still not that good. I mean, it's watchable and you know, it it's like the best I'll give it, but
Well, yeah, definitely. No, like I said, I just felt like they just could have like went deeper than they did.
yeah, I think they just took like the surface line kind of, just extreme visuals and never really went into a lot of the psychological aspects into why it was being done.
Right.
I think that was like a lot of the point of it is, why it's being done. It's not that it's being done, and I think that's kind of what they missed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're number four, my number three. So yeah, my number three is Martyrs. So
Oh, you're number three. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you kind of took me a little off guard when you were asking me about it because I was kind of like, looking at my list because I had it at number three. But yeah, I mean, it's, you can look at it for the, like I said, as the baseline, just looking at all of the visuals and, just seeing what they go through. But then you realize what's going on and why it's happening. And you want more to a story to like raise it up, and that's kind of what this does is it adds more story to it and raises it up because of that. So yeah, I mean, it's just so extreme, so just
yeah.
heartbreaking, and you just you get so attached and you feel for them for what they're doing and what's going on that as it goes on, you're just hoping and praying that it's going to have like some kind of a resolution that you want. And I don't know if you necessarily agree with it, but yeah,
But a movie that I actually cried on too. Martyrs. Yeah, I cried on this movie. And I
Yeah,
didn't even understand. I was like, why did I watch this more than once? Like, especially like the scene where she's getting just beat by the guy. I'm just like, are you serious right now? Like, this is not okay. This is torture. And of course, me as a woman is gonna, be like, no, this is torture. This is that. Why is he beating her? You know, but that scene right there when she was just enduring all of that, and I'm like, and she's still alive? I'm like, she's still alive after all of this?
yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're number four, my number three. So
Well, my number three is a Serbian film.
uh,
Serbian Spaceojevic. Oh, I probably
uh,
name.
yeah, Srđan Spasnovic, I think. I don't know. That's always the one I've gone with. You may have a better one than I do, but
Well,
um, well,
well,
like I said, I'll just say this. Yeah, we are going to talk about this because it is on my list. But
oh, well, we've talked about this before, but the whole. I already told you I watched it twice, and the only reason I watched it twice was because first I watched the uncensored version. I didn't even realize it was the uncensored, but then after I was looking at all this hype about the, baby rape scene and everything. I'm just like, what are they talking about? I didn't see that scene. And then I watched the uncensored version, and I'm just like, oh, why did I watch this? But then I think probably the most traumatizing scene for me was closer to the end when pulled off the pillowcase or whatever was on his head, and he's doing his son. I
yeah,
legit cried at that point.
yeah, that's to me. I think that's even more shocking than the more infamous baby rape scene.
Yeah, it is. Because the baby rape scene, even, like it was the whole concept of what he was saying that was messed up. But
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, as
But
far as like the scene goes, I mean, yeah, it wasn't. I mean, the scene itself was not that. You know what I'm saying?
it's shocking, but it's not as extreme as you make it out to be.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like that's really probably the whole hype of a Serbian film is that whole scene. Like everybody is talking about the baby rape scene.
Yeah, it's more the line that comes after.
Yeah, baby porn. And I just
No,
cannot stop
newborn porn.
seeing, oh, wait, yeah, newborn
Yeah,
porn. And I just cannot stop seeing his face in the screen. Newborn porn. I'm just like, ew, that's so
yeah,
gross.
yeah. That to me, I think that's the whole point behind why its reputation is what it is the line itself rather than what actually happens. Because unfortunately, I hate to say this, that baby looks faker than hell.
Yeah. So
I
have
mean,
you seen Unearthed Films release?
yeah, I have I have that version of it.
So what's on there that's not on, the initial DVD or Blu-ray?
I think it's basic. If I remembered right, I think a lot of it is the thrusting in the sex scenes last longer. I
Okay.
think I think a lot of I mean, not just the main sex scenes, but I think the earlier stuff, the main shoot stuff that goes on. I think a lot of that lasts longer, and I think a lot of the torture scenes bleed more profusely at the ends.
Mm,
It's been a while since I've seen the censored version, so I can't say for sure. But more than likely, I'm gonna throw my vote behind a lot of the penetration and thrusting lasts longer, and then I think a lot there's maybe a couple of extra scenes where they're just it's so hard. I can't remember like shot for shot, like I can't like picture the movie shot for shot to really say, but I think there's like a few incidental scenes here and there that were trimmed, but most of the stuff that went on was it lasted longer in the uncensored stuff.
Okay.
So I would have to watch them back to back to know for sure.
Ooh,
Or
don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do
I
it.
was gonna say, I was gonna. The rest of the sentence was, or for the sake of my sanity, look up online the differences.
Yeah.
You cut me off before I could finish the joke, but I was gonna say, for the sake of my sanity, look up the differences online. So yeah, you kind of cut off the joke there, but
I'm,
I think that would probably be the way to go about it for that.
I'm sorry. I just heard watching back to back. It's like, why would you do that to yourself?
Well, that
Don't
was
do
the joke, was to save my sanity. Look them up
that.
online.
I apologize for that.
It's all good. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we're going to be talking about that later. But in terms of why it's on the list, I can definitely see where you're coming from with it. But
Yeah. And like I said, like I mentioned before, like I did a research about the movie to see why, just why, and I found a interview with the director and the writer. I'm not gonna butcher the names anymore, but the director and the writer. And when I just read their responses to the questions, I was just like, wow, this is actually what's happening in Serbia. So it's like, that just goes to show like, extreme films that have actual substance and meaning behind it are, what I'm saying, they're worthwhile. They're worth actually giving your attention to.
and exactly, yeah. I mean, you're kind of taking some of my points behind it, but yeah, no, I definitely agree that it's not just enough to have a shocking image or a concept or a theme. You got to have something more to it, and that's kind of what you want. And to me, that's kind of why it is what it is. But something to discuss for later. But moving on, my number two. This was one that, as soon as I first saw it, I oddly just grew to love this movie. I have this again. It's kind of like erotic. I have this weird kind of association, fascination with it. 1996's Ebola syndrome.
Okay.
So this is the only Asian film on my list, and I'm a huge fan of a lot of the Asian extreme stuff. The Hong Kong Category 3 stuff, which this is kind of, it's not the most famous, but it's my favorite of the ones I've seen. Basically, the film revolves around this small-time hoodlum who discovers that his wife is cheating on him. And after killing her and her boyfriend, he flees the country to this small hovel in South Africa, where he ends up befriending an old, reacquaints himself with an old friend who gives him a job as a butcher there, and basically inadvertently contracts the Ebola virus.
Ooh.
And he ends up coming back and discovers that his friend has set him up as the fall guy in this weird embezzling scheme that's about to go down. And because he's infected with the virus, he decides to take revenge on it by giving the virus to his friend. And it just starts this whole chain reaction of him going around just spreading the virus to anyone and everyone he comes across. And it's so over the top and so ridiculous in what's going on. I mean, this film just absolutely drenches sleaze. I mean, there's sequences where he the guy catches, his boss and his girlfriend screwing each other in their apartment, and he ends up jerking off into meat that he's about to serve to customers the next day. There's scenes where, he ends up screwing corpses and, you know, playing with their bodies and, just trying to like get any kind of sexual thrill he can. And the finale of the film is just so over the top, and it kind of borders on comedy more than anything, but it's just so wacky and so just I mean, it's one you have to see it to get
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just fell for this film when I first saw it, and I had so much fun with it. It's actually fun, if you can call it that, which is kind of why it's so high on my list. But yeah, yeah. 1996's Ebola syndrome.
Wow, I'll definitely have to look that up. All right, my number two. Whew, another one that actually, after watching this movie, I had to watch a cartoon. I watched Scooby-Doo just to try to get it out of my mind, and it didn't work. But Salo or the 120 Days of Sodom by Pier Paolo Pasolini. And actually, I bought both the book and the movie together. But I ended up watching the movie before the book because the book is like really thick. But after watching the movie, I said, screw this book. I'm not watching it. I mean, I'm not reading the. After watching the movie, I said, screw this book. I'm not reading it. Um, but so Sodom or the 120 Days of Sodom. Have you seen it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know which one was more messed up. Was it when they had everyone sitting around at dinner eating, shit, or was it like closer to the last circle where they were sculpting people's heads? I don't know which scene was more messed up.
Yeah, it's basically just, to me, it's one that I kind of threw off just because it's one of those, it's just a collection of images.
But also, is
It,
it
it's it,
based on true events?
yeah, but a lot of it's actually come out as kind of like fanciful
Oh,
reinterpretations.
okay.
The ideas are the same, but I think the film took them to a little bit more, not necessarily to the extreme that they did. They basically made it more filmable, in a sense.
Okay.
It's more, I think, cinematically pleasing, like the concept of what they went on. Uh, the, the general gist of what they were doing is the same, but I think the movie makes them a little bit more doable in the sense of they can actually pull them off and not, put, any of the actors or actresses in kind of like like, threatening or like damaging situations, I think. I think that's basically like a lot of the changes. So it's not straightforward, like this is a recreation of the events. It's faithful, but it's not like a 100% accurate adaptation, I would say.
Okay. So, do you know anything? Because I didn't even do research on and I usually do. When a film is saying that it's based on true events or a true story, I usually do research about it. But I did not on this film. So, do you know anything about the true events?
Vaguely, it's been a while. I mean, like I said, I do know that a lot of the regime practices and what they went through is pretty close to what happened. I do know that there was a period of time in the country's history where this happened. But yeah, a lot of it I looked up a while ago, and it's floating around in my head with a lot of other stuff, and I'm not like 100% accurate on everything. Like I said, the only thing that I am pretty sure on is that even if a lot of the tortures and stuff are not 100% accurate, they're close enough in spirit that they can get away with filming the stuff and not put anybody in danger or like uncomfortable situations.
Okay.
Yeah, like that's the best I can do, unfortunately.
No, that's fine. But yeah, like I said, it's after watching it, I had to watch Scooby-Doo, and I still have the book. I tried to give the book, well, actually, the movie, I passed it on to let other people watch it, and they got mad at me for that. Actually, a former coworker of mine, I had him watch the movie, And he came back to me and said, "Here's your effed up movie." I was like, "Sorry." He was like, "Now, just for that, I'm gonna make you watch another movie, just to get even." You know what movie that was? Zombie Ass Toilet of the Dead.
Ooh, oh, that movie.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I guess we're even now because F you in that movie is what
uh,
I.
all right. So,
No one will ever come to me for advice on horror movies ever again.
yeah, I kind of figured that. But yeah, moving on to number one, kind of obvious based on the conversation, Serbian film. Yeah, big surprise there. But kind of hard to do it just because, if you put the amount of tension and effort into it that we did about making sure that there's something behind the images, it kind of makes it obvious that this is the one just because it mixes both of those aspects so well. If you can call it, enjoyable in any kind of a sense. But yeah, I mean, there's just not much else to add to it. But yeah, number one for me is a Serbian film.
Well, my number, and this is my number one, and this is actually the film that I was thinking about when we were talking about Cannibal Holocaust. It's Melancholy Dirt Angel, or The Angel's Melancholy by Marion Dora.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That scene where she was legit standing up, and so that's what I was thinking of when we were talking about Cannibal Holocaust. So that's what I mean when I said I got it mixed up. But yeah, that's my number one. And then just like there was also some kind of insect and animal deaths on there too. Was that also real on that
Yep.
movie? Oh,
Yeah, that.
oh,
Yeah, that's something that Marion Dora does in all of his films. I've seen Angel's Melancholy, and a couple of his other films, I think. And yeah, that's a pretty common feature, not just in this one, but in most of his films.
yeah. And then actually another one I've seen of his is Cannibal. What was I think it was called Cannibal, right? Cannibal. And
I've heard of it.
and that's actually based what it says. It's supposed to be based on the actual German cannibal. Um, but
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've I can't say for sure how accurate it is because I haven't seen it, but I've heard that it is fairly faithful to what actually happens. Um,
yeah, I guess he posted some ad and like some ad online looking for somebody that wants to be eaten, and then the person
yeah,
who wanted to be eaten replied, right?
right, yeah.
Actually, he's one of my. I got for him to be one of my top 10 favorite you know criminals, psycho killers and everything. um I should know his name. I think it's Ar-
Armin Muse.
Armin. I keep saying Mywis. Armin Muse. Okay. Armin
Yeah,
Muse. I kept saying Mywis, but yeah, he's actually on my top 10. And I don't even know if I should say favorite, but like when you're talking about your top 10 and you got your serial killers or your criminals or whatever in mind, he's on that list.
yeah. I mean, I wish I could say I've seen it, but
Okay.
yeah. I've seen a couple of Doria's other films, and it wouldn't surprise me to hear you say that just because of what I've seen of his, but I mean I had Angel's Melancholy actually on as an honorable mention, so that's another one of mine. But it's just so hard for me to take that seriously just because it's so long. I mean, it's like what? It's like 2.5 hours, and it just like wears on and on and on, and it kind of just like
It's like slow kill. I was just like, oh man, like I don't know if I can take the slow kill, but at the same time, I did push myself through, but it did drag on. It did drag on.
yeah, that was kind of one of the things for me is that it is depraved and over the top and brutal, but Yeah, it's just too long to really like get through. So, but yeah, for Cannibal, I wish I could say more about it, but I haven't seen it. So, yeah, guess that wraps our show up. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if you have any other honorable mentions that you want to bring up, but I mean, you're
As far as honorable mentions, what am I thinking of? Okay, so one that initially went on my list, but I switched it out for another one was Grotesque. I
oh, that was another good one. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like that, kind of like that ending scene or close to the ending scene with Grotesque. That was one. What was another one that was on there? But then I had to switch it up. Oh yeah. I think it was what was it called? Okay, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but basically, I think it's a German film. I think it's German. At least the original is German. Two guys go to this house to ask for was it eggs or milk, and then they ended up holding the family hostage.
Uh, it's not Dark Divorce.
Oh, I've seen that too. That's another mention is Dar Divorce. I've seen Dar Divorce. Oh, that was, but no, what's it called?
I know. Like I'm saying, it's not Dark Divorce.
And then they also had a remake, an American remake as well. Um,
Oh, Funny Games. Funny
Funny
Games.
Games,
Fun-
yes, Funny Games. That's another honorable mention. That, like I said, if this list would have extended past, the top 10, that would have went on there. Funny Games. Dar Divorce, that's another. Trauma would have went on that list too. Trauma, but I'm there's another one I'm thinking of. Sacrifice would have definitely went on that list if it went past the top 10. Sacrifice, because that scene, whew, that scene where he was, oh no. Um, what's another one? There's actually is it's quite a few that I have. What do you have?
yeah. I mean, you took a couple of mine. Because I had Angel's Melancholy, and I also had Thanatomorphos on mine. Um, I also had Inside,
Yeah.
the French one. That one was also on my list. And it was one that I really wanted on there, but I couldn't justify it. Necromantic.
Oh yes, Necromantic. I remember that. Oh, I didn't see Necromantic too, but I saw the first one and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted that one on the list, but I couldn't justify it. So,
Yeah, like I said, I go for more so like what movies impact me mentally, affect me mentally, which ones are more memorable. That's what I go for. But another one that really affected me too, but didn't make it on my top 10, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
I don't know that one. It's
So,
not ringing a bell.
so it's kind of like it's not as extreme as Men Behind the Sun. But it's in the same sense to where it's like it's basically in a time of war, and this boy, he's a prisoner of this concentration camp,
Hmm.
and he befriends someone another boy on the other side, that's not part of the concentration camp and everything. He befriends him, and it's just so sad. It is so sad.
Hmm. Yeah,
And and then they just meet up at this gate. He's on the concentration camp side, and then the other boys on the other side, and they just meet up at this gate and just kind of like talk and just kind of build this bond. But it's sad. It's called Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I think. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And
yeah,
it's more newer. It's newer, you know. Um,
yeah.
thinking what else? I'm thinking that might be, no, that's not it, but As far as like what I can think of right now, that might be it.
Yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank without doing being redundant or anything,
Yeah,
but I guess that'll be good enough to close it off for now. So I mean, as much fun as it was to do this, I had a blast. Thank you so much for coming on.
I thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So for people that want to follow you and your work, where can they find you?
Oh, they can find me on Facebook at, hold on, well, my author page. Okay, so I'm at, my work can be found at lulu.com/spotlight /Stacy Cox /Meister 0. My Instagram is at Meister 0 Productions. My Twitter is at Meister 0. And then my group page on Facebook is at Meister 0.
All right, cool. So yeah, all of those links will be down below for you all to check out in the show notes if you want to give her work and her a follow. So thank you again so much for joining me on this discussion. And until next time when we have another topic, we will see you then.
Thank you.